Okay, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really interesting review for you. Of course, from Bomberg Watches. They're an independent Swiss luxury lifestyle brand that really, what you'll see from their timepieces is that they're very clearly tattoo art inspired. So very niche, but always built to a very impressive fit and finish and specification. So, in terms of it being a wild card type of watch, some key characteristics and design when you're looking for a wild card watch for your collection. Of course, that eccentric and sometimes even over the top styling for a standout or statement piece on the wrist that is equal parts conversation piece as it is timepiece. And I think pretty much all of what Bomberg do fall within that category. This is their BOLT-68 Neo Automatic Anniversary Edition in silver. And it's an homage to the Mexican culture, its celebration of life and death, and its unique link with the brand. And this is limited to only 200 pieces, and it does come in some pretty cool commemorative swag that comes along with that within the packaging. The dial features this great stylized skull motif in relief. It also features an exceptional great engraving on the case and bracelet that's inspired by the Mayan tree of life. So this is definitely not for everybody. This is no, Rolex Explorer alternative by any means. But for somebody who's a collector, who's looking for something different, who's looking for a watch where you can just find new and interesting things on a daily basis as just kind of part of your wrist candy that you walk around with, this definitely could fight for a spot within your watch box. So with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so as you can see, there's already some stuff on the table, so we'll go ahead and put the watch down here. Still in scene, but you can see it actually came in this really cool box and with this awesome shirt. So big shout out to Bomberg for reaching out and sending me this example. Shirt is only a medium, so I'm more of an extra large guy, so I won't be wearing the shirt. But in terms of the quality and everything, it's pretty bananas, guys. You can even see down to, let me pull it out here, the hang tags are even something special. So very, very cool, very different. Again, especially when you're looking for something within this range, very eccentric and very particular, right? So then we get into the box, the travel case that it comes in. It barely fits in screen here. You can see the carrying handle, and then of course that signature skull motif again. Very cool. We unzip here. Ooh. Unzip there. Okay, there we go. And then inside is an actually, kind of more tame and sedate and very useful travel case, which is really cool. And again, very useful. And then in here, you're going to get your international warranty card and a nice little gift. It's just really cool bracelet. So really great color pattern, color tones here. And then it does come with, of course, again, the skull motif on the bead. So this is actually really cool. I think my son wanted to steal this bracelet from me immediately after seeing it. So very, very nice. And again, very tidy and also very eccentric. Like some of you are like, wow, that's cool, and some of you are like, oh no, that's not really my style, right? So we'll pull this off just so we have a little bit more room here, and we'll leave this on and we'll pull this up. So check this out, guys. Wow. So a little bit about the specs: 43 millimeters in diameter, so it is a bit of a wider watch, but you can see it has integrated lugs, so typically that's going to help it wear better on the wrist. It's only 14.7 millimeters thick, and I know some of you are like, only? That's pretty large. Well, I'd say only in terms of it being actually a bit of a sedate spec, and I'd say not the scale of it is actually very manageable for such an extreme watch with all of these details in it, right? So in that case, it's only 14.7, but without that crystal, it's actually like 12.4. So it actually is, relatively slender on the wrist, right? But it is, you're right, a little larger. It's 53 lug to lug, and again, that's actually this measurement from here to here, not this extension, just because I typically don't measure that as the true lug to lug. But this is an integrated watch, so there to measure that. Because it doesn't have traditional lugs, is almost kind of a losing battle in itself. But this thing is very, very handsome. You see that double dome sapphire, so at very harsh angles, you're not going to be getting any type of distortion. Let's actually give the crystal a quick little wipe here. You're not going to be getting any distortion. You're going to be able to enjoy all of those fine little details. You're getting a screw down crown, which is at the 12 o'clock, which honestly is not the easiest to manipulate in terms of setting the watch. That was probably, the only thing I'd say worth mentioning in terms of a bit of a drawback. It is challenging to set the watch with the crown here, just because it's a bit of a crowded space. And since it's screw down, the nice thing is it does pop out when you are trying to set it. So you are getting a little bit more space, but because of how much the lug kind of has that angle there, it does make it a little tricky. It's just not traditional. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, yeah, this whole watch isn't traditional, so you can't really fault it for that. This is an occasion on the wrist, and it can be a bit of an occasion even just getting it set. So for me, this is definitely a piece that once I set it, I'm going to go ahead and throw it on the watch winder, because I'm going to want to keep this thing set, just because it is a bit of a process. Being very deliberate when you are setting the time on here. The bezel is engraved, as you can see. It has that, again, tying back to that motif of vines and trees and everything like that, the tree of life. I'd say almost even kind of reminiscent of a bit of a Celtic style knot there. And then we get into, we already mentioned the crown. The crown is also signed, so everybody loves that. It would be kind of funny to see that if it didn't have a signed crown, but basically the entire watch is engraved and signed everywhere else. That would have been kind of quirky, but it is signed, so those of you who just can't live without a signed crown, that's there for you. And it's actually done, again, to a super high quality. Check that out. Multi-finish, multi-angles, textures. I mean, it's all there. And then the movement inside is a Soprod PO24, which is going to be essentially, an ETA 2824 alternative. So it's going to be just as serviceable or anything like that to your local, watchmaker. So that's good. And it does have a display case back. Not a lot of ornate detailing on the movement itself, because, pretty much all of that in terms of the decoration, right? There's no decoration on the movement. The decoration is on the rest of the watch. So I think that's kind of a fun juxtaposition between your typical timepiece, where, there's so much that goes into kind of having these sedate, very muted, timeless designs. And then they just, really almost over the top when it comes to the level of decorations on, some of those types of movements. So I thought that was really interesting that they really kind of went all in with this, where, hey, the part that you can see versus the part that's face down on your wrist, this is where we want to spend the time, spend the money in terms of decorations. So that's exactly what you could call the laser engraving that is done all over this bracelet, which adds so much dimension. And then even the bracelet itself has some really cool flat angular brushing sections, as well as some really beautiful beveling, which I will give a quick wipe here just so you guys can get the full effect. So check that out. Very, very nice. And that's even kind of discounting how much light play there is from that laser engraving. Now, getting to this dial, it's just this ornate multi-layer dial. It has the date above the 6 o'clock position that is kind of within the skull's mouth there. It has raised indices, and the crazy thing about this watch is that it actually is loomed. It uses black superluminova, which we all know that it doesn't glow the greatest, but it's cool that it at least glows, right? So that's nice, and I'm looking forward to showing you guys how it performs. It has 100 meters of water resistance thanks to that screw down crown. Again, integrated lug design. It has this angular 3-link bracelet with the engraved decorations on there. It does have a push pin construction, so pretty easy to set for anybody that has like one of those Amazon push pin tools. I know at this price point, which I guess I might have not mentioned yet, this is $1995, so just under $2,000 for this piece. And again, it's not for everybody, but for those of you that want something like this, I don't think you really expect to pay very little for this watch. Like, this watch at about $2,000 for me feels more right than this watch at $200, right? Which, some of you where it's not your taste, just because it's not your taste, you like to think that it just somehow brings down the value of, the individual components and everything that goes into it. This is really, within, again, that kind of luxury lifestyle space. And that's what they do. This piece is very, ornate and well done, and there's a lot of extra features that are done here. So of course it's going to have to cost a premium over their standard pieces, especially if it's an anniversary piece really celebrating the brand. So, sorry guys, if you were thinking that this was going to be a $400 watch, it is not. It is, just under $2,000. And again, I think it feels right at home just for the type of watch that it is, right? Like, if you think about a Hublot or something like that, if it was cheaper, I think honestly it might even be less desirable, just because there's just that equation, right? It's like somebody tries to sell you this is a good phrase somebody told me once. Somebody tries to sell you a Lamborghini for $100, you're gonna ask what's wrong with it. If they try to sell it to you for $200K though, you would be like, oh, that's a screaming deal, let's go, right? So there's definitely some of that that's happening here, and check out that counterbalance with the Bomberg, twin B logo there. There's a lot here to take in, right? And again, it's not for everybody, and even for the people that like it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has a place within your collection, especially since these are very limited, so they might even be sold out by the time you watch this video. So I'm just excited to kind of share something so different and, appreciate these little details, because I am a collector and there's a lot of things that I wear that range, kind of within a wide array, but it's nice to see brands that swing for the fences and really just do something wild and different, and that's not just a variation of what somebody else is already doing. So very, very cool. Lastly, down into this strap here, the bracelet, it does have a nice taper to it. It's only 2 millimeters, so it goes about from 22 millimeters down to 20 millimeters at this clasp here. And with that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, wears really, really nicely. Sits actually quite centered, especially considering how long of a lug to lug this has. It actually sits, pretty good there, and it has a nice little turn down. There's not a lot of gap between my wrist and the bracelet. It does have a nice drape to it, although of course it is quite angular. It looks good, and if I was to open up the shot a bit more here, not so much to where I'm going to bring the camera, straight up here and get a lot of lens distortion, make it look a bit larger. But if you just take a look at it here with my arm in proportion, honestly, it's not too huge. I've definitely worn larger watches. And this one, I'd say, although it does, it is a 43 millimeter watch, I'd say it does wear like a 43, maybe a little bit like a 42. And a lot of it has to do with this very expansive dial. Although there's a lot going on that dial, it is quite large, which visually is going to make sure that there's a lot of visual weight to this timepiece. But you can see it actually again, in terms of just a wristwatch, it does wrap around the wrist. It does stay nicely centered, and it honestly isn't super high. I mean, at this height, you're definitely probably thinking it'd be nice to have like a chronograph or something, but for me, I actually think having all the extra facets and everything, it gives you more to look at, right? If they could make this super thin, I think that would be cool too, because then I think it would actually add another layer of kind of eccentricity to it, right? And how wild it is if they were able to get this down and make it super thin. But honestly, in terms of the proportions, right, of this style of watch, this is, it wants to be feel heavy, feel hefty, have that presence. So that's all kind of part of it within the wear. It's not just in the design aesthetic, it's also within the entire theme execution on the watch itself. So with that said, let's actually get this off the wrist and set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, it is, it's not super strong, guys. It's not a dive watch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a little extra motivation off camera. Oh, wow. The shirt even lights up too. Check that out. That wasn't even on purpose. That is just a happy circumstance. That is awesome looking. Check that out. So you can see it is loomed, which is nice, even inside of the skeleton's mouth. Very, very cool. Wow, I'm actually like kind of having fun with this shirt background here. So very, very cool. Again, something just kind of different. And you can see even, in a dark situation, or right, you get this sweet shirt, you wear this thing into the club and there's black lights. Holy cow, you are making a statement for sure. But one thing I always like to do is work in some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or, just hanging out underneath a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, to even include some high contrast lighting here, which typically could expose any type of production defects. But you can see this thing is pretty pristine. I'm actually kind of wanting to now play with a mixture of the low light and the black light, just to give you guys a bit of a show here. Check that out. This thing is just cool, man. So again, it's not for everybody, but it's fun. It's a fun piece. And I don't know, there's just something about it. I dig it. I dig it. Am I going to be wearing this to the next watch meet, local watch gathering? I don't know. Probably not. But Day of the Dead comes around. This is absolutely the watch. This is the ultimate Halloween party, type of watch here. You guys will really enjoy this. And I mean, yeah, I live in Southern California, so there's a couple of really cool Day of the Dead, festivals that do happen. But this, I mean, come on, guys. You got to give it to them. This thing is a lot of fun. It is a lot to look at, and there's a lot to just kind of discover. I dig it. So for me, guys, closing thoughts on the wrist. It wears surprisingly well for such a bold piece. Yes, it is a bit large, a bit thick, a bit in your face, and I think it means to. It's not doing that by accident. It's not it's not an oversight that they did this, right? It's really part of their overall vision. So if that vision aligns with your style, then this is something I think that you'd have a lot of fun with. In terms of model variants, definitely check the site links for options and availability. I do know they had 2 other variations. I think there was a black, so basically blacked out steel. And then I think maybe one other variation for this limited anniversary model. And then for me, guys, I guess comparable models, it's tough to compare anything when it's something so niche. So I would just jump straight to the bottom line. And I'd say, while, again, in a style that's not for everyone, that's all by design, right? So again, it's not an oversight. It's just a different vision, right? That might not align with your sensibilities. So it's really a standout look from a rebellious brand, which is to be expected. I mean, these guys are not about the old tradition of Swiss watchmaking. They're definitely looking forward. They're not celebrating, a history that isn't theirs. They're celebrating the history of what they've built. So the level of detailing, again, it can be appreciated by anyone across the collecting spectrum in terms of, how this thing is constructed, the level of detail and design that goes into it. Even if you don't agree with the design, the execution is still pretty impressive. So, I mean, to be honest, this watch will most likely garner more compliments than your typical sedate traditional classics. Like me wearing this, I guarantee if I wear this out to dinner, I will get somebody will compliment that. They might not be the fine connoisseur of Patek Philippe, but absolutely your average onlooker are going to see this watch and be like, wow, that's a really interesting and cool statement piece, piece of art on the wrist. So I don't know, there's something that's fun about that, especially for me as a collector. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'm sure you guys will have a lot, and I don't mind hearing it. I didn't design the watch. I'm not selling the watch. I'm just sharing it with you guys because it's interesting to me. And there's a lot of stuff, obviously a wide spectrum of watches that are featured here on the channel. And I do try to make sure that there's a certain level of quality that shines through. And this thing is, by no means, some fly-by-night brand that's just throwing something out there for a profit. This is a real, front to bottom, top to bottom, front to back. This is an actual brand that has a brand identity, that has, everything you would expect in terms of longevity. It's not just, your average micro brand run by an enthusiast who wants to make a watch that doesn't exist. This is a brand that makes watches for a certain market. And if you're part of that market, you're going to be thrilled by this. And if you're not, then, hopefully at least you had fun looking at it underneath the lights. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please hit like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this.